Namco's Galaga is a retro gaming mainstay that has seen many revisions over the years, but outside of the core series, it doesn't have very many spin-offs, especially with full-on Q-em-up influence. While the TurboGrafx-16's Galaga 90 was a semi-Q-em-up set directly in the series canon, Cosmo Gang the Video ratchets the aesthetic and the whole fixed shooting formula all the way up in a unique entry clearly derived from Namco's original.
Cosmo Gang saw its arcade debut as a Japanese mechanical shooting amusement in 1990. Being reborn in video game form, it would be released to the Super Famicom in 1992 as a port of the 1991 arcade original. Cosmo Gang the Video brought the mechanical amusement to video displays and offers players a hilarious take on the classic fixed shooting subgenre. With the great gameplay Galaga players know and love combined with gussied up 16-bit graphics, awesome Super Famicom sound, and a few new tricks up its sleeve, Cosmo Gang the Video might just be one to take note of. Let's take a closer look.
Gameplay in Cosmo Gang the Video takes place over the course of 6 areas, each with their own stage sets and bonus rounds. Each stage has a number of waves to contend with, and the enemy opposition will approach players with very intricate, varied entrances, sometimes even from the background.
Controlling your ship is nice and simple. Movement is fixed only to left and right, and shots can be fired up to 2 at a time to take out the Cosmo Gangers. An interesting thing to note about movement is that your ship will squeeze up against the sides of the stage, making the horizontal profile of the ship narrower to avoid shots between a rock and a hard place.
In addition to a powerful twin shot that can be obtained from specific enemies, power-ups will appear with a decent frequency that will allow for players to affect the Cosmo Gangers or take them out entirely. Spider webs will slow the movement of the Gangers to a crawl, while a Jack-in-a-Box stuns them in place for a short while in order to take them out a bit easier. There are even special flags from Namco's Xevious that grant extra lives.
However, Cosmo Gang the Video also features one major gameplay twist that makes all of these enhancements pale by comparison. It has a 2-player cooperative mode. Most fixed shooting games, especially up through the 90s, have traditionally been alternating competitive games that pitted players against each other for a high score. Not so with Cosmo Gang, and it really turns the fixed shooting formula on its side.
This gameplay twist is pretty darn fun, though challenging as both players share the lifestock. This mode even has unique power-ups. A scatter shot can be obtained that depends on player 1 shooting player 2 as rapidly as possible, and players can switch between the top and bottom rows by collecting arrow icons. The top row is a little harder to play though, since it's much closer to enemies and their shots. The top or bottom player can also take the twin shot power-up, but only one player can use it at a time.
All the while, the difficulty curve is quite inviting, but gets pretty challenging up in the later areas. Game over to players looking to see the end can continue from any cleared area though.
As it turns out, Cosmo Gang the Video actually works surprisingly well as a cooperative experience, and between it and the single-player mode, there's a lot of gameplay to be had here. Perfect for sitting on the floor in front of a TV with a friend or your special someone. Even the scoring works well in both modes. The scoring in Cosmo Gang the Video isn't especially complicated, and can mostly be summed up by shooting as many enemies as possible and making it as far as possible without biting it.
P icons will grant a multiplier for each one collected. This will boost the kill score nicely, but not a lot more makes up the actual score within the actual stages of the game.
There are, however, the aforementioned bonus rounds which task players with keeping the Cosmo Gangers from obtaining various objects on the player's side. These stages are even designed after the original mechanical arcade amusements. Shooting the Cosmo Gangers with the little cannons at your disposal sends them back to the top of the screen.
Keeping the Cosmo Gangers as far from the targets as possible until the timer in the top right-hand corner runs down to 0 will grant the biggest bonus. Depending on player performance, a bonus of up to 1 million points, called the Super Player's Bonus, will be awarded to all players.
The single-player and cooperative games both have a single score that can be ranked on the scoreboard, but of course, they are wiped as soon as the game is turned off.
Still, with scoring and challenge like Cosmo Gang the Video has, as a competition piece, it might make for a very fun one, especially for team-style tournaments.
In a lot of ways, Cosmo Gang the Video is sort of like a Galaga parody, in much the same way that Parodius lampoons Gradius or Star Peroger pokes at Star Soldier. With vibrant, bright enemies, stages, and ships, all kinds of pastel colors, and some extremely entertaining sound design, Cosmo Gang the Video's presentation works really well.
Visually, Cosmo Gang's graphics pop in all the right ways. Enemies have many different frames of animation depending on their attack patterns, conditions, or even whether they're panicking. Nothing gets lost either, since the visuals are so large and clear, especially in S-Video. There will be a few times that slowdown will be present when, say, an entire wave of well-animated gangers will appear on the screen all at once.
The huge variety in the gangers keeps the whole game feeling fresh throughout the entire game too. It's sure to have players saying, hey, that's a new one, all the time. Meanwhile, the backgrounds are quite varied as well. They could have gotten away with a starfield or a handful of backgrounds like in Galaga 90, but there are so many to see here, leaving each area feeling visually fresh all the time.
Meanwhile, the music in Cosmo Gang is everything you'd expect from a quality Super Famicom game. It features great sound synthesis and good composition that's catchy and frantic, just like the gameplay itself. Basically, it matches the game's actions to a T.
On top of all that, the sound effects are plainly hysterical. Voice samples are a little downsampled, but still clear enough to hear correctly. Enemies will beg for forgiveness as they scurry away. Gang bosses will chide their underlings. Other enemies have some of the funniest defeat effects we've heard in a shooter.
Between areas, there are even little cinematic sequences, much like in the original Pac-Man, in which the gangers' antics are shown. They're simple but fun. Nice touch.
It all boils down to a Super Famicom game that's, well, pretty freaking good to be frank. But how does it stack up? Let's take a look. Cosmo Gang's basic controls are sharp and precise, but a little sluggish.
The 10 plus years of refinement to the control formula certainly shows, though.
Cosmo Gang the video ramps up its challenge nicely towards its endgame.
Being able to continue from any cleared area is a nice touch.
With 6 areas, each with several stages and several waves in each stage, there's a ton to play.
You can get double the gameplay with a friend, too. It's also a great team tournament piece.
Clear, colorful visuals pop and nothing is really lost in the shuffle. Too much at once causes a bit of slowdown though.
Cosmo Gang's highly varied enemies and backgrounds are also super well designed.
Fantastic music sets the stage for a frantic fixed shooting experience.
Hilarious sound effects and voice samples elevate the sound in great ways.
Never mind all the cool attacks and abilities, the 2-player co-op mode is a simply awesome early innovation.
It would be many years until a fixed shooter would innovate as much as Cosmo Gang the video did in 1991.
Cosmo Gang the video is such an under-the-radar shooting game, or so it seems. It really does surprise me that more people haven't heard of this great little fixed shooter. Even if you have a Super NES, this title might just be worth the physical mod. Cosmo Gang the video gets a 4.75 out of 5. Getting a copy of Cosmo Gang the video is actually extremely affordable. At auction, complete copies can be had for as little as $25, with less complete ones often for under $10. What an excellent price for such a great game.